Welcome to the TheirWay podcast, where we talk about all things in a child-first coaching. I'm your host, Laura Jane Jones, and today I'm excited to welcome our special guest, Dan Lycett. Welcome, Dan. Great to have you with us. How are you?
Very good, thanks.
Good. Dan is the head of PE and Sports at St David's College in Llandudno and has extensive experience in the primary and secondary education sectors, as well as grassroots coaching. As always, Dan, I've got to open with my old faithful of, what does play their way mean to you?
It's funny, I commented on a UKCC thing today about it's everything really. I think I was probably quite a traditionalist when I started. I graduated as a PGC student and replicated what I thought was right, and then you go into your teaching environment, and I kind of had an inkling that stuff was wrong about 4 years in. So for me, play their way is, children have agency and autonomy, and they should be part of that journey. They shouldn't be just cogs. So yeah, it's definitely, and the longer I've done this, it's just the proof is in the pudding, really.
Is being a PE teacher and doing your PGCE a little bit like when you learn to drive and you pass your test? Do you only really start to learn after you've got out there?
So I was a lot older. So I put a LinkedIn post today about my journey. So I did really badly in my GCSEs. So I predicted good grades, but then bombed, so I was just labelled as lazy. Then I did A-levels, which I really liked, like history. I did history, theatre studies, performing arts, philosophy, not your normal badge. And I wasn't doing very well. I had a great history teacher, and he said, "Why don't you get a dyslexic test?" And like a couple of months before my A-levels, I'm all of a sudden I'm dyslexic, so I bombed those pretty much. So I suppose a lot of it was more, when I went for my PGC, I didn't even get in, so I had to just phone up and say, "Give me 10 minutes, I'm pretty sure you'll be persuaded." So by the time I got there, I was a bit older, so I didn't really subscribe to this approach that I was being taught. I thought a lot of it was flannel. And then I was lucky enough to have a really good second placement in Prestatyn High. Kerry, this diminutive guy with this kind of flowing curly mullet. And he said, "The only person to write shorter lesson plans than you is me." So for me, it was more, I kind of knew what I wanted to do. I suppose the part when I started was, I was just a PE teacher. So there was a national curriculum, there were schemes of work, there were lesson plans, and all of a sudden I felt it didn't feel quite right. But you have no option but to follow those routes, really.
So for you, has play their way been a case of, oh, well, that's what I want to do, or that's what I'm already doing, and that's the name for it?
Yeah, Ross, who I work with, who's a great proponent and a real ally in all this. In lockdown, what we started to do, we had what we thought was a great process, and then we realised that probably with the central tenets, the motivating parts of it. So we started to research, and everyone was bored, so really clever people gave us their time. So a lecturer at LMJU reached out about self-determination theory. So lots of stuff we already knew as things, we just stuck labels on. So play their way is sticking a label on, but it's something that we would get behind 100%, because without agency, we have quite a few SEND students, but we also have mixed PE, and they should co-create, and they should have a say in it's their learning process. And maybe because we're a small institution, it probably was a necessity, but now you couldn't take it away. The fact that it's needed is a bit sad, really, isn't it? We need to have a thing called play their way, to say that kids can have a say in their own coaching and teaching. It's a bit 2025, crazy stuff.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? We know that under the UN rights of the child, it's not a case that we are the controllers of their voice. Children have a voice, they have a right to a voice, and we're not the people who control that. So from that perspective, when you've got perhaps recent PGC graduates who come into your department, or people on their kind of teacher placements, are you having to unlearn them from a subscribed way?
So we have had people come in. We have residential assistants, and some of them, it's been really tough. and it's very easy to fall back on, isn't it? Because we can find and locate the problem in the child rather than our practice design, our environment creation. So that's really easy, isn't it? If they're not responding, well, it's them. And we run a coach development course at sixth form, and we made little stamps that they have to collect 11 of them. They do 3 extra, they get entered into a prize draw. So they have to come and watch lessons. Plus we do lots of Danny Newcombe rollerball stuff with them and just use constraints. But the first thing is you say, what you're saying, such and such isn't engaging. What are you going to tell them off? And you go, okay. So then they watch more and they can see that actually we've got to find a way and understand why that's not engaging. And it could be the process, it could be something that's been an issue with them during the day, it could be they're tired, it could be something at home. But my job isn't to berate the child, it's to help them. And then we run a coaching day every year in the summer we call it Pizza and Swim. And to be fair, Russell Earnshaw, who's been really helpful, he's kind of pushed us to keep doing it. And we've had people like, Danny Newcomb's come up from Wales Hockey and the stuff he does with the Premiership. We even had Stephen Rolnick, who did an MI via Zoom because we nearly got him to come up, but he was very resistant to come from Cardiff. But last year we had Tony Fretwell, Amy Whitehead. But we've tried to lure people from the local environment in to kind of show them a different way. So we've had a few from the local, from the FA and WFA and also the WRU. So surreptitiously trying to change perspectives, but it's not always easy.
So when you've got people who are going through coaching qualifications, if you've got your sixth formers doing it or you've got new PGCE, you've got kind of raw models. What about more established coaches and getting them to come into this play their way mantra and realise that it isn't a case of berating them? If a child says, I don't want to be involved, and they disengage, it's not a case of shouting at them, it's asking them why and welcoming them back in.
I think most are better. I don't think it's the direct kind of berating of students, but I think the lack of understanding about why the errors occurred, and also the lack of inclusion of them in the creation. So Eston have come in to inspect us. I didn't write a lesson plan because we have a part of our we have 3 lessons a week, and one of those is we call donor. Again, we just stole the idea of Des Ryan, to be honest. When he was at Arsenal, there was complaints that they all played football all the time. So they had a day where they played kind of multi-sports that would donate skill sets. So we stole the concept of donating skill sets. So we'll go down and I'll know I've got X year group, but we want them to use evasion, spatial awareness, sending, receiving. So within that, I think what we're trying to do is create the opportunities there, so then the kids can, this isn't working. Okay, let's use a pause. What do you want to happen? Okay, go back into groups. If you could both change something in the next 30 seconds, what's it going to be? Okay, so I think that lends itself, and that's what we're trying to get across to coaches is your practice design isn't rigid. It should be fluid, and then we end up with this lack of kind of rigidity around instruction.
If you don't have a lesson plan, can you still have desired outcomes for that session?
Yeah. So within, for instance, within you have functional movement sessions, and a lot of that is we talked briefly, didn't we, about psychological safety, but landing, change of direction, hinging, pivoting, the stuff that probably kids in the 70s maybe had because they're outside more often and accessing that environment. And this is not castigating the youth, it's just societal changes. But I think we need to be way more aware. I did something about education is this really slow moving glacier, but like society is like skating across the top of this thing, and it's just moving along and it hasn't changed. Kids don't access things as they used to, so that their physical competencies have dropped. So I know that this is the group and this is the kind of stuff I want to do in this age group, and I know with this group that they really need to look at kicking out a hand, or this group really needs to look at like being able to, almost like a counter attack, they need to move the point of the ball. So we played a game the other day where I had these kind of circular hoops on top of poles, but they could multi-direction score, and then 2 areas which are less points. And obviously, if you couldn't score in one, you've got another 3 you can score in. But they really struggle with that concept, so that's something I'm going to have to revisit. So my practice design will change in the future around that. But they can, again, it might be my questioning, it might be something I could do with levels. So, yeah, there's nothing specific, because I think, again, that leaves, when it's really rigid, I want these outcomes, I think that's when we have these problems. I want you to be able to do these things, and I'm just going to do this until I see it. Isn't necessarily that it's been impactful.
Has the spectrum of physical competency grown, do you think?
In
terms of ability, are there children who are sitting at polar ends, of those 2 poles got further apart?
I think we're a different institution. So what I see is, so we'll play big state schools. So we played a school the other day. They've got 1,200 kids. We've got 250 kids. So what I see is big kids play rugby. So they bring the 20 biggest kids. I do see less in the way of movement competency, definitely. I used to go and watch the Exiles train, and someone asked me what I'm looking for, and I just said movement capacity. Can they move well? We can turn people into most things. If you look at the Women's World Cup, most of those will not have come from rugby to begin with. They're different things. So I would say, yeah, on the whole, and I think long-term athletic development and functional movement 100% needs to be part of a curriculum model.
Do you think when we look at self-management for kids in sporting groups, that functional movement improves when they're managing it themselves as opposed to us prescribing a session on them?
Oh, yeah. You'll give them, so something like, I want you to travel around, we have this squishy room, I want you to travel around a squishy room, and I want you to do these 3 things within it. So it could be, I want you to change direction, can you change direction in the air, and can you use one limb for something? So straight away, the creative element becomes, it's just self-determination theory. It's the central part of everything. We have kids in school and we talk about behaviourism, carrot and stick, which has when you talk to them, it has limited repercussions for them. But then you talk about self-determination theory, you say why you're doing it, and we have conversations and stuff comes out. It's how Deci and Ryan isn't the prevalent motivation concept. I have no idea, because it just doesn't make sense. If you're going to do something well, I'm going to reward you, then the reward itself becomes pointless. And then, or if you don't do it, I'm going to berate you, but I've not looked at why you're not able to complete that task.
But when we're moving away from those models, are you finding any barriers with other coaches when you're trying to say, we're going to approach things so differently to how we've done it for so long?
It's probably the reason I coach on my own at the moment, under 14s, is because I don't really like lots of conflict. I'm happy with it when it comes, but I don't want to look for it. So I'd rather coach on my own than have that conflict. So the other day was a level 2, needed to do some work, and I've done 2 touch to warm up with. Then I've thrown in, we talked about how we want to protect the ball when we land. We talked about falling on the ball, and I didn't tell them that I said there's an auto turn, and I didn't say why. So they're 2 touch and they're going down on the second touch, and if they haven't fallen on the ball, just turn over. And then I said, the first team to figure out gets a score boost. And you can see them all like, do you want to pause? To go to the level 2, and we've got hitting pads in cues, and you've got praise, not affirmation. I'm not really, what are they improving? Are we just doing it till it looks good? Am I tracing, or am I allowing the kind of creative juices to flow? And it is challenging. I get challenged by the girls all the time. And I drove back from Mid Wales the other day when my daughter slept, and I was like, crikey, one of them really struggles with this. How am I going to approach this? What do I need to do to bring her on board without going, kind of do know what I'm doing? You're wrong, I'm right. So I think it is complicated in that sense.
I guess that was kind of what I was going to ask you next. Do you find that there's a barrier from kids themselves in terms of, I know that you've coached those upper junior age groups at Club Rugby Gogledd Cymru and those 18s girls, for instance. Have you ever experienced any pushback from the youngsters themselves, who they're so used to being coached in a carrot and stick way, that when you try and do something a bit more creatively, they don't know how to let go and they don't know how to lead those sessions themselves because it's not how they've been coached to this point?
Yeah. We've had students come in and it might take them a year. We had one boy just recently played for the USA and he just traditional English prop. I run in straight lines, this is what I do. Now we're playing a game where you have to kick to score to win, and he's like, props don't kick. Well, I know, maybe you could be in a 22 and, you know, if they score, it's a game over and there's only you to kick. Could it be useful? Or, you know, so it can be. And I have found it where players have been in an over-prescribed environment and they push back because it's not what, and that over-prescribed environment is deemed as more superior in terms of coaching prowess or teaching prowess. Yeah, 100%. But most, because it comes in year 5, but by the time they go through, they're just part and parcel of the environment for them.
Do you think that's part of this concept that play is a bit of a dirty word when it comes to elite coaching?
Well, I was called out on that at the UK coaching conference by Mr. North, and he said, words to an effect, and he said he was clumsy, but words to the effect that whenever I've seen good coaching at children's elite levels, it's not play. And I said, but words are divisive, aren't they? Play doesn't have to be frivolous. Play allows creativity to occur without judgment, and I think particularly in certain environments that's important. No, do we want teams to, where winning might be an important part of the process, to run the ball off their line or try shooting from the edge of the D every time? No. But can I encourage it in certain situations? Yeah. And if they think it's on, can I give them some freedom to try those things without being judged? Yeah, because they may have to do those things later. So I think play is attributed to frippery and silliness, and I think that's a real adult thing, because adults don't play enough.
Well, with that in mind, one of the things you talked about was children's elite environments. Are they two words that probably shouldn't go together, children's and elite? Is that where this is getting missed?
Yeah, I think maybe children's elite environments is created because people want to access better coaching. So maybe we wouldn't need this kind of movement to pathways or counties if the provision. I went in, it must be 15 years ago, and a guy I'd played rugby with was coaching like the mini kids, and he said to me, "Isn't it weird that the kids at this age get the worst coaching?" And I was like, "Wow, you're right." So they get, and it's so haphazard, and I don't think it's that it's worse. I just think that it's less informed, and I think we're so grateful for volunteers that we don't have any support for them, and then NGBs create coaching pathways, but they're kind of shoehorn bits in. They forget bits. So I think if it was better delivered, maybe we wouldn't need it. But this concept of elite is a necessity for some, because that accesses better coaching, perhaps. Do
you think it would put coaches off at those levels if they were to be renamed play leaders? Instead of being...
It's a lot of ego there,
instead of being Bala under-8s rugby coach, you're going to be Bala under-8s rugby play leader. At that point, do you think there are people who are going to check out? Possibly,
yeah. I think, particularly some sports, I see a lot of dads with their kids, I tried my daughter at everything. She was told not to go back to ballet. She ran rings around the swimming people. The tennis lady was a bit unpleasant. She stuck with rugby not because I made her, but that was her drive. It just happens I like rugby. If you called me a play lead, I don't think I'd be too bothered, if I'm honest. But I suspect there are people who would.
How do you see a difference between kids who are coached with a child-led approach, not just from a sporting outcomes perspective, but elsewhere? Are you finding this is becoming a more widely used style of support and education within school and academia, even outside of sport, that listening to children is at the heart of this?
I think so. We talked about education as being pretty glacial. I came with this kind of thought process the other day, like that parents are on Earth and they're looking up at the stars as if they're still there, but the education system is telling them they're still there. Well, they're not. Whereas we should be help, because parents need support. They were in school 25 years ago or whatever. They need support to know that the systems have changed. There's more like things like trauma-informed teaching. The society is insane. We've both plugged our phones in. It surrounds these kids 360. There were no phones when I was getting, no internet. You pressed a play deck to load a computer up and hoped your nan didn't turn it off because you thought you left it on. Whereas now it's constant, and also it's not all true. So the lives of these kids is very different. So I think I do think it's slowly changed, but you've got to also remember there's a cadre of teachers and leaders who have no idea about how that interacts, and I think at some point they also a bit ambiguous and ambivalent about should it matter. I'm now the head of XYZ. My opinion is all that counts. So yeah, I think it is changing slowly, and you see stuff, things like the Magic Academy concept was a bit of an outlier, whereas now you see stuff like TheirWay, more and more people using this approach, and also seeing that probably that kids' progression in sport is not about becoming elite, it's about engagement and staying involved.
Can sport lead with a framework in this sense? We know that PE and PE teachers can be a bit of a safe space for kids who perhaps have academic struggles or might be now labelled and statemented as SEN. They might be the naughty kids in class. I know I always was. Could this autonomy model help them in other areas, do you think? Is that why kids gravitate to sport, because they have that autonomy there and always have done?
Yeah, my wife tells me my brain never switches off. So like every morning it sounds awful. I sound like a right stalker. I go around my garden, which is just a big old field really, and kick a deflated rugby ball for my dog. And I video a 5-minute brain dump to Ross, who's my work husband. And a lot of this is around like, how do you change it? Because you've got kids, society have changed. The world that they're going into is probably going to be way different from it is now. And you have an education system that is pretty much hasn't changed since the turn of the century. That's insane. Like, if we were to sit here now and talk about the equipment that's in here or how you got here and say we're going to use the same methodologies that we did at the turn of the century, you'd laugh at me. But we're doing this to an impressionable a generation after generation. It's insane. It's wrong, really. So I think it has to be the approach, and it has to be not just the purview of sport, which I think is a bit more fast-paced, and PE can sort of dip in and out of that. It needs to be in everything. It needs to be in the classroom, in every part of school. And I think really sport has a way of driving it, but it needs a way of plugging into education as a whole. Why can't you have agency and autonomy in a classroom? We do it with our academic studies in PE. We got rid of our level 2 course and made our own course. Dear SIMSPA, please accredit it. So parents let me use it more often. But so you've got kids who can, every half term we do a unit and have an open university open learning course that they can choose, and they go at their own time, and we have lots of circle time conversations, but their higher order thinking's gone through the roof. I'm not telling them what to do or how to do it, we're just working together, and they have agency. We agreed in the last lesson, how far do you want to get through the next OU course, because you've got 20% done. One kid says, another 20%, we can finish it, can't we? We've just done 20. Okay, we'll finish it for next Thursday. Why can't we do that? We can't do that because we love tick boxes, we love league tables, we love measuring our kids against other kids. Why? The skill sets that you're learning in a classroom, I would suspect, are not going to be relevant by the time they leave.
It's interesting when you talked about things like the technology and stuff. I know that other guests we've had on the podcast have talked about kind of battlegrounds now for sport provision is that children have so much choice. As opposed to that being something we worry about, is that somewhere where sport can fit in because it's a place where they naturally have choice and they do have that ability to self-organise and be in charge of themselves? Is that why they seek out these other things like digital world and gaming and stuff like that?
I think we need. I think every generation has its kind of bogeyman. You know, my mum says she lived in Liverpool and they used to go to the coffee shop and listen to records in record booths. That would have been the bogeyman then, you know, this awful thing. And I think you're not going to win, so you have to embrace it. So I'm trying to think of the gentleman I was on, who was on the panel, basketball, and he uses loads of social media to engage with what they've done in sessions, so the kids enjoy that. We use loads of social media. We bring groups into video stuff to engage the kids. Things like after matches, creating little awards. You know, we have school without line, but the raven of the match, the person who just worked the hardest, and then they see themselves in that social media sphere. And the other one is using things like Padlet to help coaches develop. So I think it's easy to vilify, but I don't think you're going to win that battle necessarily. You've got to find a way to work with it.
From a sporting perspective, giving kids the keys to the kingdom and letting them self-organise and let them tell you what they enjoy and what they don't enjoy, it must be hugely beneficial to them as communicators in general as well. Are you finding that you have girls and boys who come in at the beginning of term and the beginning of their school academic programme with you and they are quieter, and once they're given the ability in these scenarios, in these environments, to actually decide what it looks like and how they're going to participate, are they different kids at the end of the year?
Yeah, 100%. We had a game yesterday and again, we bring a lot of the coach educators down and they'd organised their own little training session and one boy hadn't turned up and refused. And they decided as a group that he would sit on the bench to begin with because he hadn't decided to participate. And I thought, I'm going to let them run with it. He was okay with it, understood why it happened. But how much better is that they've come up with that? Not an arbitrary teacher has imposed this rule, but as a social group. And I said, you understand why that's happened? Boy, I didn't turn up. Were you late? No, I just didn't want to go. I said, okay, cool. But you understand why that you're going to sit on the bench then? Yeah, because that kid did turn up. And then things like, because you can, it isn't the keys to the kingdom. It's not like Ben and Holly and you let the jelly flood occur. You're there, aren't you? Monitoring, probing, questioning, affirming, using things. So if a boy in year 9 really struggles to engage, I tried everything in last session. I think, oh my God. And Esther inspector comes down and I think, oh my days. So we questioned and then we brought the group in to create a task for him to have a go at, which he succeeded in. And I stole an idea from an outdoor ed trainee from years ago, which is put your hand on the shoulder of the kid you think has done. And I'd gone up to open the change rooms and Ross had finished off and he said, put your hand on the kid who's worked the hardest. Every hand on his back. And now a really challenging group. They're not the loveliest, sugar and spice kids. Hand on the shoulder, and he said he beamed, he lit up. So, and it's all incremental, isn't it? He's not an elite sports person, but he's now probably moved further than I've moved others. So your hope is next time maybe it's an easier challenge, or maybe he'll come to me. I'm not really finding this engaging. Brilliant, what can we do? I'd like to do this. Let's work that in. Let's get your team in. So I think, and again, it's self-determination. They're finding it relevant. They've got agency, and we're there to do the stretch and challenge part all the time. So yeah, 100%. I can't think of going back to, I say you do, really.
That kind of peer review, peer respect model probably fits into that journey element, that journey pillar of Play Their Way. Do you think that could have the biggest impact on long-term participation? The fact that we're not providing positive affirmation as adults, as leaders, but that their peer group, when they organise, when they have that autonomy within themselves, that keeps them more engaged.
Yeah, and we have to model it by creating the environment first. It's not that sandcastle doesn't appear on the beach. You've got to make it, and it does erode. You know, we always have problems. We use an ecological lens, and sometimes you have to strip stuff back because it's too complicated and they can't regulate in that group. So sometimes you do have to remove things and say we're going to simplify the model. But I suspect as they get older, they're way more open to having that conversation. Plus, they've seen that approach prior. So my brain's wandered.
Well, do you know what? It's interesting because one thing that, having read some stuff that you've previously done with, I know you did a podcast interview with another coach I know, Jess Bunyard, and it was around Rugby Tackle Week, and you talked about the psychological side of contact in the game. I don't want to make any of this rugby centric because this podcast is starting to sound like I'm trying to turn it into a rugby podcast, but you're the head of physical education at your school. But has that become an archaic term? Is the psychological and mental side of physical exercise and movement for kids as pivotal as anything else now?
I think just in education, we can't sit in boxes in our environment, and it just so happens that we get to be cool outside and they get to let loose. So the psychosocial is huge. So that video talked constantly about psychological safety. It talked about layering. It talked about trying to meet their needs at the right point. But it makes it seem really simplistic. There's a genuine, the skill lies with the coach to constantly be able to adapt. So I always used to say that we're like a sloop that we can navigate, and that lots of educational establishments are like these big galleons with guns everywhere, but we can nip about because we can change direction as needed. So I did a sock wrestling thing with the girls. So I wanted see what their psychological safety was like. They wouldn't hurt each other, and then they wouldn't take their shoes off. So straight away I had to adapt. So I put bibs around their ankles, you know, and then I said, okay, go with your buddy that you're okay with, and then I was like, go with someone your similar size, and you have to navigate these things. And I think a lot of coaching is, particularly grassroots, is the Instagram. I'll use that, and it looks like this, and I'll implement it. Well, it doesn't look like that. It looked good on there. It must be their fault. Finding the problem in the kid. So I think it's the speed of navigation. But I think going back to the previous, PE is psychosocial. It just happens we get to like play cool games and move a lot.
Do you think that there's a misconception that a child-led approach isn't about kids coming up to our level, but us actually meeting them down there?
I still think there's expectations. I still think we can set standards and stretch and challenge. Okay, self-determination again, because we need to sort of not move it so far that they give up and it's unattainable. But then also, if you go back to the beginning, so it's longitudinal, is they used to failing. I did a game the other day, a bit like Gaelic football. One of the girls don't kick out a hand a lot, so they isolate the hips. They kick long legged a lot. This girl's amazing, it's just full of energy. And I said, right, 50 points if you can do a kick to yourself, a solo whilst moving, and then kick to score. She must have tried 20 of these. Just failed. End of the session, tap, crossfield kick, like catch it on the fall. Place goes wild. But the 20 we don't remember those, do we? Because we're just practicing. But also we're so used to just failing isn't an end product. There's something else comes after, because we've tried and tried and tried. But the skill is also the affirmation. Like, I love the fact that you're starting to bend at the lower leg there. Or you're travelling through the ball. As you kicked it, you were able to kick it further. So I'm not telling them what they're doing right. I'm not giving direct information, but they're attuning to those components all the time. And at the end, she was so happy. And the kid who caught it, it was mixed, big high fives, fist bumps, and that. So yeah, I think that's the important part around layering things in with those kids.
As a coach, what is your driver? What is the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning and out to do this?
ADHD. No, I don't know. I put something really honest, like up until like a couple of weeks ago, I just thought genuinely everything was luck. I thought I'd been lucky. We've won loads of awards. You know, those 12 girls who play for Wales, I thought it was luck. The lad who's played for America, luck, just the right play. Other people's contributions. But the thing for me is that we can give so much to them. There's people on social media and on LinkedIn that sport isn't PE, and it's not our job to create long lifelong continuity connection to physical activity, but it is, and we can create such a cool environment for them where they have space. And I've seen kid after kid after kid benefit from it. So even when I'm not having the greatest time away from that, this term I've loved getting up and coming up with practice designs and, you know, annoying Ross with my 5-minute chats before we go to work, because it does have a benefit. And at the moment, I'll be honest, we've done these like pizza and swim things, and some of them have been successful. But really, I just want other people to know that we don't just have to put a thin film over the traditional approach and just, you know, let them have a few questions. We can literally throw the rule book out and approach it like this, and it has success models and it will work. It just takes a lot of patience but also a lot of self-awareness, which is hard to have if you think you're self-aware, you're probably not.
In terms of the outcomes of this approach, what is the bigger achievement for you? These 10 girls who've played for Wales, or kids who go on to have a lifelong connection to participation and movement?
Oh, just seeing kids who you thought would, you know, you have conversations with them or their parents, and they're like, he never did PE in his other school. Win. Or, you know, we had an OT who came, a kid had moved from London. It's like, that is not the kid that we had. And it's like, and it's odd because there's one, so occupational therapy, sometimes people think it's a bit of a misnomer around movement, but well-groomed, putting gel in his hair. And this is off the back of all those mini successes, because like through the physical realm, but also stepping out of PE and going into other lessons, talking to OT, having chats with parents. So for me, you know, if we can make their lives better, that's brilliant. It's great that those people have gone on and had Welsh Cups. It really is, and I probably did a tiny part. You know, people probably the little version of me when they were 5 years old did way more. But yeah, at 22 years in, I've had more fun this year than in the last 5 probably.
Okay, 22 years in, so you've got another 22 years coaching at least.
You get very cold.
What's your number one ambition as a coach? What would you like to see as an outcome from your coaching career?
I really love coach education, and the sixth form course we've done, I've seen the skill sets that could be used going into other areas, but also the change in people. So I would encourage everyone to have a go at coaching, but they also, whatever NGB or overarching body, there needs to be an investment in, we talked about the softer skills around supporting the players as people first before they're a footballer or a tennis player, because without that, I don't think it works. It looks like it works because people are going to be successful, and we can point at them and go, but they were successful. But then you can go behind the sofa and see the hundreds of kids who were driven away from physical activity or the sport. So I'd love to be involved in people relishing this model and this approach, and also more people thinking, I want to be a play coach. So
Danny, are you going to start posting your 5-minute rants to Ross on your LinkedIn? That's the big question now.
I don't think you want to.
Instagram stories?
I might put one of, I started, so I realised I could put it in, because it's a chat GPT, and say, just take out, this is the thread, I want you to write what I've just said. So that really worked well. I didn't realise I could do that. So yeah, or when I know the guy cut me up on the way home last night, Ross. But so a lot of it is honestly, I would say to people talk about journaling all the time, but in the morning, and also I encourage him to reply because he lives on a mountain as well, and show me your sunset, the sunrise this morning, and how you feeling before the day, because at the end of the day, we are colleagues, and people talk about they're not your friends, and I'm like, I hate this perception that we can put everything in boxes. How nice is it if we can get on with everyone and we can all help each other along in the right direction? And any time I always say to him, I say, like those texts you get, reply stop to just stuff like that. But yeah, I think we should all have a Ross, really.
Well, that's a lovely note to end it on. Dan, this was a great conversation. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And if you've enjoyed the podcast today, be sure to leave us a review and share this with someone else who you think might like it too. And follow Play Their Way on social media at Play Their Way on TikTok, X and LinkedIn, and at Play Their Way UK on Facebook and Instagram. See you soon.